Assalamualaikum and good day. My name is Aisha Nabila binti Azhari. My metric number is 314150 and I will begin our presentation for today. To start off, the main purpose of our project is to analyze and also to compare the financial performance between two companies that are in the same industry. For this assignment, we had chosen LYSAGHT Galvanized Steel BERHAD and also Leader Steel Holdings BERHAD. By using financial ratios, we aim to understand how well each company manages its resources, earns profit, and also maintaining financial stability. But before we go into the ratios, let me first give a brief background of both companies. Firstly, for Leader Steel Holdings Berhad, the company was established in 1987 and originally focusing on manufacturing flat bars. But over the years, it had expanded into two main areas, which are the manufacturing and trading of steel products, as well as the trading and processing of minerals. Their operations are mainly based in Malaysia, but they also export certain products to Singapore and China. This shows that the company not only serves local demand, but also reaches international markets. Next, for LYSAGHT Galvanized Steel Berhad, the company was founded earlier in 1979. LYSAGHT first started by producing corrugated steel pipes, guardrails, and highway-related products. But as the company grew, it began to design and manufacture more advanced structures such as steel poles, transmission towers, and telecommunication towers. Their products are widely used in infrastructure and engineering projects, which gives them a strong position in the construction and industrial sector. By understanding the background of both companies, we can see that even though they are in the same steel industry, they are specializing in different areas. This makes the financial comparison more meaningful because it allows us to identify each company's strengths and also weaknesses. Without further ado, I will now pass the presentation to the next speaker. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nalus Nabiti Jahari, 313478, and I'm going to present the first ratio, which is the liquidity ratio. And under liquidity ratio, we have other two ratios, which are current ratio and create ratio. So what I'm presenting right now is the current ratio. We are going to divide current assets with current liabilities. For the first company, Leader Steel Holdings Berhad, they are able to pay 1.79 times its current assets for every 1.0 its current liabilities. On the other hand, the second company, they are able to pay 18.78 times its current assets for every 1.0 its current liabilities. First company, they acquired less current assets and higher current liabilities. This is because they have a high total borrowing, which contributes to increase the amount of current liabilities. The first company, they have a large amount of inventories. This contributes to cash and bank balance to decrease. On the other hand, the second company have less inventories, which resulting in them having a more cash and cash equivalents. This acts as a cash cushion for the company. However, idle too much money means that the company prevent or hold themselves from maximizing potential returns. Therefore, it shows that the first company focused more on increasing their current assets sufficiently to cover their high current liabilities, while for the second company, they focusing more on increasing their current assets and lowering their current liabilities in the same time. The second ratio, the formula is almost the same, but we will change the current assets to be quick assets, which we omit the inventory. In 2024, Leader Steel Holdings Berhad only has 0.39 times current assets without inventory for every 1.0 times current liabilities. Meanwhile, for the second company, they are able to have 10.94 times current assets without inventory for every 1.0 times current liabilities. The second company has a higher quick assets and providing to a higher liquid assets for short-term operational needs. Unlike the first company, they have a fixed deposit placed with licensed banks, which means that they invest their money in a saving account with fixed interest rates. And so they gain less cash in investment compared to the first company because fixed deposit placed with licensed banks is some kind of low-risk investment. This indicates that the second company is missing out on better investment returns since they have a high cash and cash equivalents collection. Hence, LYSAGHT Galvanized Steel Berhad has a stronger liquidity position and better ability to cover its immediate short-term liabilities without needing to sell long-term assets.
Assalamualaikum and good day. My name is Nur Darlina Darisha binti Muhammad Darus. My metric number is 313458. So we are moving on to the activity ratio, which is the first one is total asset turnover, where the formula is net sales over average total asset. Let's go to Leader Steel Holding Berhad Company first. We managed to get 0.47 for the total asset turnover. This means that the company are able to generate 0.47 for 1 ringgit invested asset. This means that the company are able to use their asset quite well. Let's go to the LYSAGHT galvanized steel berhad. So we able to get 0.52 for total asset turnover for LYSAGHT galvanized steel berhad, which means that the company are able to get 0.52 for 1 ringgit asset that they have invested. This means they are much more better in terms of using their asset because they are able to utilize their asset more efficiently in order to produce more revenue. So to conclude, the LYSAGHT galvanized steel berhad had a higher ratios compared to Leader Steel Holding berhad, meaning that LYSAGHT are able to have more sales than Leader Steel Holding berhad. This might indicate that LYSAGHT have a better capacity utilization and more efficient in the production process. Now let's move on to the next activity ratio, which is account receivable turnover. The formula is net sales over average trade receivable. Let's take a look at Leader Steel Holding Berhad first. The account receivable turnover for Leader Steel Holding Berhad is 6.93, which means that they had collect a receivable for almost 7 times a year. This means that they have a strong credit management as well as faster customer payment. This can lead them to have healthier. This can lead them to maintain a healthier cash flow and reduce the risk of getting bad debts. Now let's move on to LYSAGHT galvanized steel berhad, where the account receivable for the company is 4.44, which means that they had collect less receivable than Leader Steel Holding Berhad. To conclude, Leader Steel performs better in managing their receivables because they have a higher turnover which is 6.93, while LYSAGHT only had 4.44. This shows that the company had collect the customer payment more quickly and efficiently than LYSAGHT. This also reflects that they have stronger credit controls and a better cash flow management. This can also illustrate that Leader Steel Holding Berhad may have a stricter credit policy or shorter payment terms compared to LYSAGHT galvanized steel berhad. If LYSAGHT galvanized steel berhad still maintain a lower ratio of account receivable turnover, this can lead to issues such as increased risk of bad debts.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurjaha binti Sadali. My metric number is 313960. Next is profitability ratio. First, profit margin on sale. The formula is net income divided by net sale. For Leader Steel Holdings Berhad, they get 0.01. And for the LYSAGHT galvanized steel Berhad, we get 0.03. This means that Leader Steel Holdings Berhad contribute profit of 0.01 ringgit for every 1 ringgit of sale, while LYSAGHT galvanized contribute a profit of 0.03 ringgit for every 1 ringgit of sale. This means that LYSAGHT galvanized earn more profit compared to Leader Steel. Also, LYSAGHT galvanized show stronger profitability performance than Leader Steel. Next, return on common shareholders' equity. The formula is net income minus preferred dividend divided by average common shareholders' equity. For the Leader Steel Holdings Berhad, we get 0.03. And for the LYSAGHT galvanized steel Berhad, we get 0.02. This shows that Leader Steel Holdings Berhad has 0.03 ringgit of debt in company for every 1 ringgit contributed by shareholder. And LYSAGHT galvanized steel Berhad has 0.02 of debt in company for every 1 ringgit contributed by shareholder. This means that Leader Steel generate more return in each 1 ringgit invested by shareholder, and LYSAGHT galvanized has higher financial risk than Leader Steel Holdings Berhad. Lastly, leverage ratio. First, debt to asset ratio. The formula is total liability divided by total asset. For the Leader Steel Holdings Berhad, we get 0.26. And for the LYSAGHT galvanized steel BERHAD, we get 0.05. This shows that leader steel has 0.26 times asset to pay 1 times debt in company, while LYSAGHT galvanized steel BERHAD has 0.05 times asset to pay 1 time debt in company. This shows that LYSAGHT galvanized debt performance are better than leader steel holdings BERHAD debt performance. Next, debt to equity ratio. The formula is total debt divided by total shareholder equity. For the leader steel holdings BERHAD, we get 0.34, and for the LYSAGHT galvanized, we get 0.05. This shows that leader steel has RM0.34 of debt for every 1 ringgit contributed by shareholder, while LYSAGHT galvanized has 0.05 ringgit of debt for every 1 ringgit contributed by shareholder. This means that LYSAGHT galvanized release less on equity to pay off their debt than leader steel holdings BERHAD.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurul Shazani binti Imam Awaidan, metric number 31402. Today I'm going to present you the suggestions on how the companies can improve. We're starting off with Leader Steel Holdings BERHAD. First, they can leverage technology and automation. Technology will take over the repetitive tasks to reduce human errors and labor costs. This will allow staff to focus on important tasks and enhance work performance. Current liabilities can be decreased as initiative to improve the low quit ratio. When comparing the current liabilities of both companies, Leader Steel Holdings BERHAD shows a big contrast with a very high amount. The company can pay off current liabilities by using available cash to pay off account payable or short-term debts. Another choice is converting short-term debt into long-term debt, resulting in the debt removed from the quit ratio calculation. Finally, the company can reduce total asset to address the low total asset turnover. This can be done by selling underperforming asset. This is important because rather than having too many assets that do not generate more revenue, it is more beneficial to sell the assets and convert it to cash. Now, we will move on to LYSAGHT galvanized steel BERHAD. First, LYSAGHT galvanized steel BERHAD must manage their inventory. Referring from a very high liquidity ratio, this shows that the company is holding too much asset. This shows that they do not efficiently utilizing its asset for maximum returns. Holding too much inventory may also increase storage costs. Instead, the asset could be used for reinvestment and growth. In addition, LYSAGHT galvanized steel BERHAD can automate payment reminders to get paid faster and improve cash flow. This is important as their account receivable turnover ratio is lower than the recommended average ratio. Lastly, the company can also step up their game by increasing operating leverage. As the leverage ratio is too low, the company can increase operating leverage by hiring more permanent and specialized staff rather than hiring temporary workers. Now we have reached the conclusion. In summary, the comparison of liquidity, activity, profitability, and leverage ratio reveals contrasting financial position between the both company. First, liquidity ratio indicates that LYSAGHT galvanized steel BERHAD is in stronger financial position than Leader Steel Holdings BERHAD as their ratio is higher. Secondly, activity ratio analysis shows that both of the companies have their own weakness and strength. LYSAGHT galvanized steel BERHAD ratio is higher than Leader Steel Holdings BERHAD in total asset turnover. However, in account receivable turnover ratio, Leader Steel Holdings BERHAD is better as they have higher ratio. Thirdly, in terms of profitability ratio, LYSAGHT galvanized steel BERHAD is greater than Leader Steel Holdings BERHAD as they have a higher ratio. Finally, looking from the leverage ratio, LYSAGHT galvanized steel BERHAD is better as their ratio is lower than Leader Steel Holdings BERHAD. Overall, these results provide a clear overview of the company's financial positions. The objective of this report is to analyze and compare the financial performance between both companies. Calculations were made and interpretations were written after observing the ratio. Accordingly, comparison between both of the companies was conducted for deeper understanding. Lastly, suggestions were proposed according to companies' weaknesses to help them improve and step up their game. All in all, we came to conclude that LYSAGHT galvanized steel BERHAD is better at financial performance rather than Leader Steel